Call this meeting to order. It's 7:07, a little late because of the storm, but we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you like to do it, Eric?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We remain standing, a moment of silence for the brave men and women in the troops, EMS, police, all aspects that protect this great nation. Give them the fortitude to continue doing what they're doing. Thank you.
Chairman's report. I'd like to announce the board met in executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss a personnel matter and to hide from the tornado. East Goshen Township Department of Parks and Recreation has been named a 2019 National Recreation and Parks Association Gold Medal finalist. And we are so excited. There are only 4 finalists in this category based on overpopulation.
And they're all in the same state, so that's why we should win the entire big prize.
Well, Jason explained this to me. Illinois apparently has a system where they fund local parks through taxes and whatnot. And all of our competition are much larger and much better funded. So Jason is in the process of making a 5-minute video, which has to be, I think the end of has to go in by like this, I think June 2nd or something like that. And we are hopeful that he's got great ideas for it. And we're hopeful that it makes an impression on the judges. The winner will be announced in September down in Baltimore, I believe.
So you would just win this big litigation? I don't know.
I wouldn't bet against you. Ever. Okay, the annual long-range planning session, the financial session, will take place on June 29th, May 29th.
Tomorrow.
I thought it was tomorrow. Okay.
So,
At 10 o'clock
Yeah.
tomorrow, it is an open meeting. You're welcome to attend.
Thank you.
Yes.
You gotta stay awake though, if you come.
All right. We have been meeting with East Whiteland Township to discuss the intersection on Route 352 and King Road, which is problematic if you ever drive by. There will be an informational meeting at Immaculata on Wednesday, June 5th at 7 o'clock in the Great Hall, where McMahon and Associates will be giving a presentation of what options are available. And no decision-making will be done at that time, but it would be interesting if there's a lot of information that is going to be transmitted. Okay, we will now have public comment on non-agenda items, and we're gonna make that short because we have a very long meeting tonight. Are there any comments? Okay, we will move on.
Good start.
Yes, emergency services report. We go none. Carmen?
I have the fire company monthly reports. Goshen Fire Company I'm just going to do totals tonight to save time. East Goshen in fire, EMS, and fire police at 214 calls. Breakdown we will have on our website. Malvern had 34. This would be either basic or advanced life support ambulance calls. And Good Fellowship had 53 in East Goshen, which is 10.5% of their call ratio. They run 10 to 13%, so that is pretty much on margin.
The fire marshal report.
Oh, you didn't ask for that.
I'm sorry.
I will first apologize to the board for 17 emails. The simple fire report, my Adobe, whatever it's called, for the township report will not save and forward, and it runs back to mama and does a fire I did like 2 years ago. I think Ricky gave me a solution that I can tie into something with codes. But anyway, 5/13/19, we had a dwelling fire, 1714 Eastwood Road. I was here at a municipal meeting, so I did respond. I was first on location. It's a long stone driveway, about 500-600 feet, if not more. And I just didn't want to see a bunch of apparatus getting tangled up in the driveway. Ended up being a wood stove fire, but the fire was out. So the fire company just had to clean the chimney and put it back in service. You see that on the report. I won't get into the names, but you know who the name is. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Financial report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As of the end of April, we have a positive budget variance of $244,000 and a year-to-date surplus of $688,107 in the general fund. We've caught some breaks. We had a relatively mild winter for snow removal purposes, if not weather. And we started off the year very well with real estate transfer tax. Earned income tax is trending slightly above budget. Things look positive to start the year. Really nothing out of the ordinary to report on among other funds either. Everything is functioning smoothly. Sewer and refuse fund is doing as well as we expected. Really nothing else to report there.
Thank you. We'll move on to the minutes. Are there any comments or questions?
None here.
Not here, but I will make a motion to be approved.
Is there a second?
Sure.
Okay, all in favor?
May 7th, I'm sorry,
As amended, again.
As amended.
as amended. Did I say that right?
And the treasurer's report? What else?
Do that? Okay. We have a lot. You'll see John's memo, that it includes some capital reserve stuff. Make a long story short, does anybody have any questions on any of the huge stacks of invoices that we have here? You do?
I do.
Okay. Madam Chairman, I would like to move that we graciously accept the receipts and approve the expenditures as outlined in the expense register once we vote.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You know, Janice, somebody ought to mention, John did a little work putting that, where we stand with our loan, so we know where we stand. That's pretty neat to have. And, this is John put a little thing together, tells us where we stand on our loan with respect to the money, with respect to the money we have left, which is pretty interesting. Ricky, where do we stand on the progress of the brush back?
They need to put the brick on, install its equipment inside, so we're on schedule. The floor's poured, the roof's on. Electrical pretty much done. They still need to install the doors, the actual heaters, and then I think there's hoping to get the framing inspection done this week.
Are we all done downstairs in the front door?
I think they need, Chaz needs to do some work on patching up some of mortar joints underneath the medallion, or that plaque. But, I believe it was really,
I'll tell you one thing, that thing's gonna be
Very
well
nice.
received by everybody. Certainly
It
everybody.
is lovely.
Very well worth the money.
Next, we have a public hearing on conditional use application to modify the August 19th, 1997 Pico Energy Gate Station conditional use decision to allow for the installation of a 10 by 16 communications equipment building on the Hershey's Mill Village property at the intersection of North Chester Road and Wineberry Lane.
Sure, thank you. This is a conditional use hearing. Pico Energy Company is the applicant. They lease a portion of property owned by the Hershey's Mill Homeowners Association. The property is located, as the chairperson said, at the intersection of North Chester Road and Wineberry Lane. It is specifically identified as Chester County Tax Parcel Number 53-2-25.3. The applicant received conditional use approval from the township in 1997 to construct a 10 by 16 building on the property, which is currently being used as a gas gate station. Pico Energy Company now seeks conditional use approval pursuant to section 240-8D2B of the East Goshen Township zoning ordinance in order to construct on that same property a shelter to house fiber optic communications equipment. The proposed building will be 10 feet wide by 16 feet long and 12 feet in height. I'd like to introduce exhibits on behalf of the Board of Supervisors. The first is Board 1, which is the conditional use application. It was received or sent with a cover letter from applicant's attorney, Neil Skarloff, dated February 25th, 2019. Board Exhibit 2 is a proof of publication. Tonight's hearing was advertised in the Daily Local News on May 13th and May 20th, 2019. Board Exhibit 3 is a letter from the applicant directed to Mr. Borden, granting a 60-day extension to hold the hearing. Board Exhibit 4 is a notice dated March 1st, 2019, that's sent to property owners within 1,000 feet, and it advises them of the application under the various boards and commission meetings where the application was discussed. Exhibit B4 also includes a list of the property owners who received such notice. B5 is affidavit of posting. Property was posted on May 20th, 2019. B6 is a letter from your conservancy board. It gives a recommendation to the board on the specific application. B7 is a planning commission recommendation, and that is dated May 6th, 2019. And finally, B8 is your memorandum that was addressed to you from Mr. Gordon, your zoning officer, and has a suggested motion. The applicant's counsel is here, and I will turn it over to him in a minute. Do you have any objection, first of all, to the board exhibit 1 through 8?
No.
So admitted. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to be a party to the proceeding? And that means that you would reserve the right to cross-examine witnesses and appeal any decision of the board. Anybody in the audience that wishes party status? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Matthew Ferguson, 1598.
Please go there since we're recording.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we have you fill us out so that I can and write legislative on mine.
Fairly close to it.
Okay. My name is Matthew Ferguson. I live at 1598 Wineberry Lane. My main concern is just figuring out where this is actually going to be built on the property in relation to the building that already exists there.
Okay, and how close is your property to this proposed location?
Right across the street.
Okay, so I would suggest that you would be granted party status. Please fill out that form and then give it back to me.
Sure.
And I think when you hear, you'll see what it's about. I actually can give you a packet of exhibits that will show you some photographs.
Okay.
So fill that form out first. I'm gonna make sure I have your name, address, and everything else.
can be off the record, I'm just gonna show them. So this is a photo simulation, that's the existing parcel, and that's basically behind the 15 minutes.
This might be a better view. Because you'll see your house. Here's the new structure.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Right here.
It's actually
On the other side.
That's what it's showing.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay, so that clarifies.
Just show them.
And I'm not trying to pressure you, I just didn't know.
Because to explain the difference, because he has a right to know everything without. Party status is only if you feel you might want to
Present
appeal any decision. If it's just for information, and I don't want to talk in an over-talking attorney, but there's a difference between wanting to know what you want as a resident and the status that would give you right to appeal any decision. So you may just be comfortable with knowing what's going on.
You know what's going on is probably fine. That location helps a lot and knowing exactly where it's going to be relative to where my house is.
Okay, well, why don't we reserve, when you would be under the law, you would meet the elements for standing to be considered a party.
Okay.
So why don't we let the applicant counsel go forward, explain to you, you're welcome to ask any questions. I think they do have a witness, if you want to ask them questions. Obviously, you can ask the board any questions as well.
Okay.
Okay, proceed in that fashion. Okay, great. Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to be a party? Okay,
Thanks for being concerned.
and here, you can take a whole copy of the exhibits. You can see.
Thank you very much.
Sure,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay, Mr. Scarlett, am I saying
Okay,
that right?
good evening. My name is Neil Slarhoff. I'm an attorney, and I represent Pico Energy Company this evening in its application for
Wait,
conditional.
Excuse me, please,
We're gonna have to
please,
go on.
Yeah,
other, we're recording it, and so if you don't,
Radio wave.
Excuse me if I have my back to anybody. Again, we're here,
It's a trick microphone, we did that on purpose.
that's okay. I got- we'll make it so.
Talk right into it.
Notwithstanding that you might have somebody who wants to be a party, I thought I would do this as a narrative and try to limit the scope of what you need to know. Because you really have everything in our application, in our submissions that have already been made, and in the materials that were entered into the record by the solicitor. You have all the information I believe that you would require. So we ask that our application and other materials that have been submitted to the township be included in the record. With me today is Malcolm Friday, who's the project manager for this installation. We were hoping to have Chris Helm, the construction manager from Henkels and McCoy here, but I will continue. And excuse me if we duplicate what's already been stated, but I promise I will be brief, uncharacteristically brief. Pico has an easement for a portion of a parcel that is owned by Hershey'sville Homeowner Association. As you've heard, the property is an R1 low-density open space residential district near the intersection of Wineberry Lane and Westchester Road. In 1997, the Board of Supervisors granted to Pico the conditional use approval to allow Pico to install a gas gate station on the property. And Pico did do that. A gas gate is an installation that will add an odor to natural gas and regulate the pressure before it goes to Pico's residential customers. This project, which is a 10 by 16 by 12 foot high metal building, will house telecommunications equipment. We are not a telecommunications provider. Up to now, we've been leasing copper cables from Verizon. We have built out a rather expensive telecommunications system for ourselves. This facility is unmanned and it is operated remotely. Occasionally, a technician will come to do standard maintenance, or if there's a problem revealed in terms of our remote monitoring of the system, a technician will appear at the building and do whatever he has to do. We think, as you know, we come before you with the approval of the Planning Commission, the Conservancy Board. We think that this is consistent with your community development objectives and the intent of the residential districts. Again, it's our own fiber optic system that we want to coordinate with the rest of the stations throughout the area in order to regulate what's going on in the gas station. Again, it's unmanned, but a technician may be on site. To facilitate his work, there's a single light above the door, which is motion controlled and timed. Otherwise, there are no lights that would be seen coming from the facility. We've submitted a application which we understand will be approved for stormwater management. And we have agreed to a number of conditions that are shown in your minutes from the Planning Commission, as well as a draft motion and staff recommendation. This is really a very modest proposal. We'd be pleased to answer any questions, but I think that's really all.
Yeah, can you explain, my understanding is that the gas gauge station, the function will remain the same. This is for fiber optics equipment, servers, things like that. Can you explain why the building is 10 feet by 16 feet?
There is a layout that was originally submitted with a larger packet of materials, and I don't know if that survived all of the submissions and passed on. But there is a diagram. There are cabinets within that diagram, and there needs to be some room to move around. There are racks on the walls as well as stationary cabinets. And if you'd like to see a chart of that, I do have it.
Yeah, that was attached to the application for the full plans that you probably have.
No, I'm not sure I see something. So, it may have been a diagram.
May I?
Yeah, I mean, if it was attached to the application, it's a, yep, he has that. Okay, sure. Why don't we mark that as, Board Exhibit 9. So applicant council is handing another more detailed floor plan of Mark Board Exhibit 9.
There won't be anything else stored in these other than the equipment that's in here.
Correct. That's correct.
I have agreed on, David?
Yes, thank you.
Neil, I have one question, if you don't mind.
No.
Any updates or any changes that you do to any of your buildings, at least in Chester County? Is Chester County EMS, emergency services notified and given update plans in case there is any kind of an emergency there? So that local fire companies would see a different layout versus what might now show up on our CAD system?
I understand your question. I think it's well taken. Not if you know the answer, and if you don't, we'll make a representation that you get the plans. The fire companies.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever encountered.
You have to identify yourself.
Oh, I'm Friday, Eagle Energy Company. So I don't think we've ever encountered a situation where we had to, but we can definitely provide any updated plans post-construction to the EMS, the fire department.
I'm going to request in this case that it least for this structure, since it's in East Goshen, Chester County, Goshen Fire Company, and our code department be given any updates that they may need. Again, the county CAD system may show the existing building, but it may not show any new construction.
We'd be pleased to just,
Your code department will get it if there's a building permit that's issued. Mark, will you be issuing a building permit?
We will.
Okay, so the code department will get that, but as far as the emergency providers in Chester County, we can impose that as a condition. Sounds like the applicant will agree to that. And just because you did provide testimony, can you just swear in the witness, please?
This question,
Hold on a second. I want her to swear in the witness.
okay,
Can I ask you to raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony back to the truth of what's written in this book?
Yes,
Can you just spell your last name? Sometimes spell-
Friday, like the day of the week.
Okay.
I have a quick question for you. Is the valve that handles the transfer from Texas Eastern to the Pico system, is that inside these buildings or outside the buildings?
Inside.
Is the mercaptan, the addition of the mercaptan inside the building also? Is that part of the valve installation?
We're not,
Motorizer?
we're not installing any valves within the actual existing
No,
building.
you're leaving everything alone that's there, right?
Yes,
This is just the installation of the equipment that you got designated on the stuff that you've seen.
Yes.
Yes.
And
yes, just telecommunications and associated support.
I'm assuming from that location, whatever the amount of take is that they have from transition from Texas Eastern, it's not increasing. There's no increase in the level of service or the gas or anything else there. And just as, I should know because I used to work for people at one time, but I'm asking this question because I don't know. The mercaptan itself, was the owner advisor. Is there, what happens if inside the building it were to leak? Which I'm sure probably has never happened. I don't ever remember happening when I was there, and I don't remember happening certainly here, but I'm just curious to make sure that in this day and age, I must admit, we got pipeline phobia here. So we ask more questions than we ever used to because of that. It's just a kind of a question to make sure that nobody thinks that there's something there that would cause a problem in the future if in fact there was a leak or anything else like that. That's the only reason I'm asking the question.
Do you know the answer?
so right now, actually, Pico Gas, we're seeing to Pico, actually monitors all the pressure flow, the odorizers, all that, from their operations center in West Conshohocken. And so right now, they already monitor that. The fiber optic equipment that we're actually installing within the actual shelter itself will actually still support that system. The operations and existing services will not change. Basically, the actual traffic that they see being monitored at the Hershey's Mill Gate Station will basically run over that actual fiber optic equipment that we're installing, and it'll work the same and operate the same.
That brings me to the question. I'm familiar with the West Coast Optic Station. Is that where the information is read from?
Yes.
Okay, run a supervisor's base. I thought that maybe what was in. Is all it doesn't go anyplace else but there, right?
So West Conshohocken is the main, well, I guess you would call it the main gas cord. King Prussia is the backup in case West Conshohocken ever fails.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the board? No? Okay. Mr. Ferguson, do you have any questions?
I have a few. The existing,
You don't mind sharing the microphone?
I'll make the exercise in this regard.
And then the response, you'll have to step forward, you can step out of the way, just so.
the existing building, do you know how tall that is? It's on the property?
Do you know?
I do not. I don't know. Off the top of my head.
Well, there's a scale.
I'm guessing it's probably gonna be close to 12 feet. And then really the follow-up to that question is gonna be, what about the building on top of this building that you're currently going to build? It's gonna be 12 feet high. Is there any potential in the future to put a microwave antenna on top of it or anything else?
No.
Can you speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry.
Because I didn't get your answer.
Sorry about that. So the 12-foot building, will it stay 12 feet forever?
Yes.
Nothing to be added on top of it?
Yes.
Is that laid out in these plans?
Well,
Such
if
that,
I may, we would not be able to expand it unless we came back to this board and got another amendment or another conditional use approval, unless they changed the ordinances to allow us the frontage. I don't think it's
I think a lot of people that are here, they don't come here all the time, and they don't realize they got a conditional use here and way back with it. And those conditions are posed. The only thing we're doing tonight is posing additional reasonable conditions on what they're doing today. It doesn't change what they had to do yesterday. So they're still obligated to do what they agreed to do back many years ago, and this is just taking care of what they're doing today.
And Mr. Ferguson, so you understand, the application is very specific to this particular building, which has dimensions laid out in the application. So if the board were to grant approval, it's specific to the building that they represented their building, which is a 12 foot tall building. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
And the fiber optic lines that are gonna run this building, are they already existing, or you have to dig to put them in?
Well, they're gonna run underground with the pole. But it's not,
But like right out from the building?
Yeah.
Yes.
it's like, we're not stringing wires, right? It's cable.
Any questions?
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to ask any questions or make any statements to the board about this application? Okay. Seeing none, we will close the record.
If I may just add, I'd like to thank Mr. Gordon for all the courtesies that he extended to us.
You mean to tell me you're giving Mark Wood an attaboy? You're giving him an attaboy?
Shout out.
So the evidentiary portion of the hearing is closed. The board can, if you feel that you're ready to make a decision, you can, and as board exhibit shows, there is a proposed motion consistent with the planning commission's recommendation, or you can take the matter under advisement and issue a decision within 45 days.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for your consideration for the entire board. I move that the Board of Supervisors approve the conditional use application of Pico Energy amending the 1997 approval to permit the installation of a 10 by 16 communications equipment shelter at the existing public utility facility to house fiber optic equipment for the facility with the following conditions. Evergreen landscape screening shall be installed to conceal the new structure from the adjacent residential properties if determined necessary by the township zoning officer. Number 2, a representative of the pipeline shall approve the location of the shelter and the stormwater management infiltration trench prior to the issuance of the building permit. 3, a representative from the pipeline shall be in attendance on site during the delivery of the equipment shelter. 4, all conditions from the August 21st, 1997 approval remain in effect with this amended approval. And I'm adding a number 5, that the applicant will notify the county emergency services as to the construction change of this building. I'll second.
Does the applicant's counsel have any objection to those conditions?
No, we accept those conditions.
Madam Chairman.
You need a second.
We have a second.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry, I
David
didn't see that.
seconded.
Any questions on the motion? Any questions on the motion?
Anything from the public?
No questions.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm gonna stand there for Mr. Ferguson, because you were a party, you were admitted party. The state law requires that when we do a decision, we have to do findings of fact, conclusions of law. Unless you would agree to waive that, it would just then be a written decision that would just basically restate what the motion was tonight. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That way we can just do a typical letter. Otherwise, we'd have to do findings of fact, conclusions of law and order. So thank you for that, Mr. Ferguson. Okay,
That completes our
Thank you.
business before the supervisors, and it's permitted, we'd like to excuse ourselves.
Certain.
Thank you.
be
Thank
safe.
you.
No rates though.
Yeah, do you want to give me your business card in case you get any questions? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Christie.
Yeah, no, I'm.
Thank you, Gail.
All right. We're going to move on to old business. When a township develops a comprehensive plan, it is standard to give a copy of it to their adjacent communities so that they can review it and make comments. So we have received the West Goshen Township Comprehensive Plan and the West Whiteland Township Comprehensive Plan. And the Planning Commission has reviewed both, and we are going to consider their recommendations.
Madam Chair, just one amendment to the West Whiteland Planning Commission, or the West Whiteland is just an amendment with their bicycle and pedestrian plan, they're just amending the current plan.
Thank you.
Mr. Gordon, you happen to know anybody on the West Whiteland Planning Commission?
I know all the numbers.
Just so everybody knows he is one of them, by the way, just in case anybody doesn't know that. I just don't know. They might need that later. What you're doing, what are you up to?
Madam Chairman, there are two separate motions, and if it's appropriate, I'll go ahead and make both of them, and then we can have any conversation afterwards.
Before we make the motion, do you want someone to read the recommendations from the Planning Commission?
We
Those
can.
old-
Go ahead.
Okay. These are recommendations from the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors first on the West Goshen Comprehensive Plan update. Recommendation 1, that West Goshen and East Goshen work together in the future should development of the Brandywine Airport occur in the future. Number 2, that West Goshen and East Goshen continue to work together on future traffic improvement projects that impact both municipalities as we have in the past. And recommendation 3, that East Goshen support West Goshen Township's effort for all future pedestrian planning, especially proposed connections to the Paoli Pike Trail in East Goshen Township. Carmen?
Madam Chairman, I move the board direct staff to send a letter to the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors highlighting the above referenced recommendations from the Planning Commission and staff.
I'll second.
Any comments from the board?
Just a couple questions, not specifically on the motion, but Mark, I think you might know this. Was referenced under the pedestrian and bicycle circulation access and safety, either under goals or a couple others. One of the goals, establish a connection to East Goshen Township's Paoli Pike multi-use trail via bike boulevard that traverses West Goshen Township. Are we referring there to Sharon's that would be painted on the road as opposed to a distinct trail when we talk about a bike boulevard? Or are they talking about a distinct off cartway separate bike lane that is fully established for bikes only?
So there's a myriad of different
Could you
forms.
please?
Yeah, sure, sorry. So as I read the plan, there's a myriad of different thoughts along those lines, Shero, off-road trail, bike lanes, that type of thing. But the planning hasn't been done.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I hadn't seen, and then the other one I just wanted to ask about under, this is listed under priority issue 3, again, pedestrian and bicycle circulation. Number 6, they reference adopt a complete streets policy. Is that when they say a complete streets policy, are we talking about a multimodal approach to the circulation infrastructure in the township that includes that? Or I hadn't seen that term, so as a planning term, I'm not sure what that one was.
I've heard it a couple times, and typically is referencing the amenities, the bike and pedestrian access to communities, commercial, residential, that type of thing. Also the streetscapes with lighting and those types of things. I think that's what a complete streets.
Yeah, I was just
Views.
curious. This was informational, not to change the motion or offer any amendment to it.
Yeah, I think they're really at the 10,000 foot level when they're looking at this plan.
As most comprehensive plans are.
So,
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Any other comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Next is the West Whiteland Township Comprehensive Plan Amendment, Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. Nothing, no specific issues or concerns. Carmen, you wanna do that one too?
I was going to, but then we just did them individually. Pay attention, would you, Mr. Chairman? Madam Chairman, I move that the board direct staff to send a letter to the West Whiteland Township Board of Supervisors supporting the proposed bicycle and pedestrian plan amendment to the West Whiteland Township Comprehensive Plan.
I'll second.
Any comments? Anything from the audience? All in favor?
I would like to make one comment. I made this comment before. The fact that both townships that are contiguous to our township have built bike and pedestrian into their comprehensive plan and amendments speaks to the fact that our trail have other townships starting to think about pedestrian and alternative transportation, and I think that's really great that we took a leadership position in that. It shows that in the future, maybe not in my lifetime, all our townships will be connected via bicycle and pedestrian trails, and I think it's a great initiative.
David, just so you know, that the trail that we're all talking about, including ours, is part of the mid-county trail system that the county improved about a year or so ago. We were lucky enough to go, even though we were kind of on an outlier, so to speak, we were fortunate enough to go first, which enabled us to get a number of grants that we might not have otherwise gotten. But, and ours is relatively simple compared to what West Goshen has to do, and let alone what West Whiteland has to do. Because ultimately, this trail will get over from Westchester to West Goshen over at the county trail. And likewise go up to Downingtown. So it's a rather extensive trail system on top of what everybody else has going for it. And you probably already know this, I would suspect. The county is working on a trail that will go all the way out to the end of Chester County and hook up with the Lancaster Trail, Lancaster County Trail, which in effect would take you over to Harrisburg. So someday you're gonna be able to go from Harrisburg on the trail all the way down to Philadelphia.
We won't need a bike at that point. David, wings, I think will work for us. Yes, wings.
Okay. All right, next. Hey, cool, yes.
Carry on.
We have a recommendation for a Goshen Parkway sidewalk.
Yes.
Mark, do you want to talk about that?
Sure, happy to, Jim. Synthase, Q Synthase, Johnson & Johnson, and now a newly acquired company who's doing some of the manufacturing. The conglomerate wants a pedestrian access for their entire, all the campus. They occupy all but one of the outer properties. One is CTDI, and they encourage everyone to walk. They have a lot of healthy initiatives throughout their company. So although we did put in a share the road walking, marked walking path along the roadway in the shoulder, they still don't believe it's safe enough due to some people with speed and drive recklessly, I guess, on the road. So they want a safer alternative. So they came in and asked for a permit, and I said, well, it's a little more than just a permit. We're gonna have to discuss this and look at the alternatives. So we did. We had the staff, the township engineer, Kristen, sat in on that meeting as well. And we discussed some of the alternatives. I've outlined 3 there for you. I took some pictures and I went out there and I really looked. There'll be some significant tree pruning and maybe some tree removal to be done out there. So it's not cut and dry. So something we want to put a little bit more thought into and just let them go for it. So, but you have the motion in front of you, the recommendation of staff. The easiest one would be to put it on private properties and let them fund it and go forward. Second would be put it in the right of way, and the township would have maintenance responsibilities there. And the third was, which one, Rick?
Would do it.
And then the township would put it in the right of way, so.
So the motion, the recommendation, Mark, is number 1, which, the only con was public access would not be guaranteed unless the township were to stipulate as a condition. And I just simply said, so we'll do that. And so 1 is the way to go.
I thought there would be some legal agreement that
It's really make a motion. I have it. First of all, if you want to shift this around, I'm going to change this one first, just in case.
Sorry about that, spelling, I'm an engineer,
That's not.
No,
I happen to notice that. I just said, there's something missing. There's a letter missing.
Good
But anyway,
spot, Marty.
why, I don't quite understand, or can you explain why 1 is preferred to 2 if we can get them to do the maintenance, which would free us from doing the maintenance? The fact that it's in our right of way doesn't seem to me to be a big deal issue because they're paying the cost. They're responsible for the maintenance and public access will be guaranteed as long as we have them be responsible for maintenance. It seems to me that that's a better approach than number 1.
But the only comment I made to that, Marty, was, yeah, public access would be guaranteed, but there'd be no guarantee township would not have some unknown future responsibility if in the township right away. Who knows what that could be, but there could visit upon us something down the road legislatively that now that it's in your right away, you have to do X, Y, Z. So it's the unknowns.
But
That's a good concern.
Safety, fines, and liability.
well, it
Okay.
seems to me
That's for sure.
it worthwhile to us to have it in our right of way with some control or potential control.
I don't want it in our right of way.
One of the
I'm just
considerations that
asking
Mark
a question.
Miller has, one of the.
One at a time.
Making a big issue about this. I just want to make sure that we are making the right decision. But it just seems to me that having it in the right of way is the way to go as long as we're not making an unduly
Right.
obligation to ourselves.
One of the concerns the Public Works has is if there's a sewer issue and they need to go in, this isn't just sidewalk, concrete. This is this very specialized pervious stuff. Mark would have no clue how to dig it up and then replace it. We need access to that right away for sewer stuff. And certainly, presumably Verizon and Comcast and Pico. So those are the concerns if you put it in the right of way. It's going to be.
We don't want it in our right of way to where our crew has to touch it for any reason.
I understand that, but the way the letter is written, it seems to me that we could effectively guarantee that the maintenance is a responsibility of the property.
But that doesn't affect Public Works if they have to dig it up for.
Well, why would they have to dig it up?
We have sewer lines in there, there's utilities, it's a right of way, Marty.
I understand.
It could be Pico, it could be Aqua, it could be any of those utilities that are in the right of way today.
Why complicate a fact that we could have problems down the road because we have to dig up a sewer lateral? Get it out of our, if they want it, I think I applaud them for doing it, and if they're willing to pay for it, that's even better. Well, but let them do it on their property so that we never have to go in for any reason whatsoever and touch it. I don't want Mark's crew or anybody's crew to have to go in and dig it up for any reason.
My interest is future interconnectivity of all the pathways and walkways and so on. So, Mark, I would ask you, when you say we have to take down a lot of trees and pruning and so on, that would be if it's on their property. How far does that move it away from our right of way? Is it?
Typically, that's about 12 feet from the curb.
I'm just trying to.
You're out of the township right away at that point. 10 to 12 feet, something like that.
It's also a safer location off, further
True,
off the
it is
cartway.
farther from the cartway.
So there's something to say for that, that's so extreme.
There could be significantly more grading if it's out of the right of way too, because right now you have the road and we have a right of way that is fairly determined, it's there. And then you've got all their plantings and trees and slopes. And so we go back to them with this recommendation. They may say it's too cost prohibitive to do it at that point. I don't know. Well, their plan shows a pathway in the right of way, just off of the curb and within the right of way.
Did they, from your conversations with them, was there any expectations expressed by them about the township having a direct role in this, i.e. in our right of way? Did they say, this is what our preference is? Was there any of that?
So their preference is to put it near the right of way where there's little to no grading, because they want to take advantage of it's already built road. I mean, the shoulders are there, the right of way is wide enough. If you go outside of the right of way, that could deter their building this. They could come back and try to submit that it's better in the right of way, it's less grading, it's less disturbance, that type of thing. So after looking at it closer, the right of way would probably be better, but I totally understand the township's position and Mark's position.
Is it possible that they're, depending on the grade circumstances, the existing conditions, that there could be a bit of a hybrid where in certain locations, possible that moving it into the right of way for a small segment because to help them
Definitely.
do the construction to say, all right, we would consider taking this segment to avoid you having to further dig up, remove trees, further grading. There's a possibility of something like that. I don't know how complicated that then would get to have, again, a hybrid situation, but just to try and be accommodating. But I'm with Carmen. I don't want to take, as a municipality, I don't want to take any more responsibility than we need to. I think the success of a municipality many times is not how much legislation you pass in a year, it's how little you pass in a year. That's just a personal philosophy, but I think that there's something to be said with that. And the less imposition we can have in our hands and on things, I think the simpler we can keep it over time.
Kristen, I have a question for you. If we were to come back and say, fine, use our right of way, you will pay, obviously, any cost. Now, we're letting them install it on our right of way, which we typically don't allow people to do. So this would be a first, I think, in East Goshen. We are allowing them to build it to their specifications, which are not our specifications. Now, we could, I guess, ask for a condition that it be built to our specifications. The next thing I have is a concern. Can you protect, if we were to let them go in our right of way, can you protect us so that there truly, in 7 years, would not be any reason that they come back and say, well, guys, it's in your right of way, so you need to do this widget? That, bottom line is, I don't want any cost today, and I don't want any cost 10 years from now. That's why you want it on their property.
What if there were a change in the companies and the ownership, and over time they said, we really don't want this trail. Well, it's in the township right away. We're not going to pay any attention to it anymore. We're going to let it go, and we're not going to maintain it and let the township take it over. That's an unknown potential, isn't it?
Yeah. So what I would do, can I answer the question? If you were going to let them use your right of way, you would draft a legal agreement similar to the legal agreements that are further on your agenda, but it's in reverse, right? You've asked private property owners to grant you the right to build a Paley Pike Trail on land. And in order to persuade them to do that, the township has made certain promises and obligations in the addendum to the easement agreements. Here it's the reverse. They want to use your land to build a sidewalk. That agreement will spell out what that property owner's obligations are. The agreement is only as good as the party that has to honor the agreement. So we can write in all protections we want. We can tell them what specifications it needs to be. One of the conversations that we had with the engineer was, if it's within your right of way, even though you're not building it, does it have to be built to ADA specifications? I'm not sure we got an answer to that, but I'm thinking that the answer is yes. So that obviously is a concern. The second is insurance obligations. They would have to provide insurance to the township and indemnification obligations. Even though it's in your right of way, we would want that property owner who's building it, sounds like it's more than one, to take responsibility in case somebody was injured or harmed. They may not agree to that. So once we present them with the legal agreement that I think adequately protects the township, they may say, sorry, this is more than we wanted to take on. Where if you let them do it on their private property, township doesn't get brought into a lawsuit. I mean, if something happens, if you allow this to occur within your right of way and something happens, even if you have this legal agreement in place, the township would get sued. Now, that's not to say that you won't have insurance to cover that, because obviously you would. But just be aware that you would be named defendant if somebody was harmed. You would then look to the agreement for having that private property owner step in and indemnify and defend the township. So again, insurance covers it all, but
Let me finish where it was, because I was going to go there. These are a very big customer. They're a very big component of the corporate park. I would assume, Mark, that when they approached us, in their mind, they were thinking that we're going our right of way, our expense, and our maintenance. I would have thought that they did not come in with that idea.
not at your expense, no.
Yeah,
They
it was
did
in
not.
our right of way. They're prepared to build it and pay for it and agree to maintain it in perpetuity.
Are they aware of all the things that Kristen talked about?
I tried to explain it to them. I think
Well,
they're,
the reason I say that, we have never asked anybody to do this. I would rather put on the table, what would we require for them to do this in our right of way? And if in fact they agree to all that, then we're pretty much protected to the extent that we can. However, they may not agree to all that, as Christian pointed out, and they would say, okay, we'll put it in our right of way. I would rather do that way, and at least try to accommodate them and have them say, I don't like that idea, I'll put it my own, rather than us taking a very valuable customer, so if you will, and tell them that they need to put it in their right of way at their expense and their cost. We spend a lot of time trying to help our business to our customers. They're a very important component of us. I don't want them to think that we're picking it on them in any way, shape, or form. So I'm suggesting that we need to be careful about how we present this in order to get the end we want, or if we can't get the end we want, we at least go as far as possible to protect ourselves if it ends up in the right of way. Because I have a suspicion that they're going to be so much shocked if they have to if we tell them that they have to build it on their property at their expense and all the other stuff that goes with it. I would hate them to think, you know what, these guys aren't as willing to do things for us as we think they are. And that concerns me. So I think that we've got to give this a lot more thought before we go charging back with just put it on your property and the hell with it.
Mark,
I lean that way too.
is it possible to map where the current utilities are in that right of way? Is it possible to accommodate I don't know how wide, if they're talking about a 9-foot trail or a sidewalk or.
It's gonna be a sidewalk, yeah, so.
There's a sidewalk, basically. Is there enough room in the right of way to avoid putting it on top of a sewer pipe?
No,
There isn't.
you're gonna cross utilities. It's
Well,
just a-
crossing is one thing, running on top of, linearly is
They also- They're there today. You're right. If this corporate park was built today, it would have been built a lot different. Obviously, the utilities would have not conflicted with the sidewalk that was planned. In this case, there wasn't a sidewalk ever planned, so it's right there along the, and it would have to take significant expense for J&J to identify all those utilities, mark them out, before they plan it. Now, utility companies deal with sidewalk issues and these all the time, so it's not a new thing for them. It would be new in East Goshen because we don't have sidewalks. This would be
I ride a lot of trails, and a lot of trails are dug up every once in a while because of a utility issue, and they dig them up and they put a little thing around it, and they fix it and then ride again. So just
I'm fine with the way Marty wants to propose it, but I'm not for opening something up new with our right of ways that could present a problem in other areas, which we've never done. Especially by allowing someone to build something in our right of way. I'm uncomfortable with that. But if we want to word it differently, now they are very valuable. I will agree with that 100%. If we want to word it differently, that's fine. But at the end of the day, the message is going to be the same. We hesitate.
It's not a question of what in this case, it's a question of how you do it. Because you can do it in such a way that sort of gives them, or takes it back to where they were, but they have to understand what our own position is, and they might lead themselves into that decision. That's what you really hope for, because, and maybe this right-of-way business and the utilities isn't as bad as it seems, probably, but the simple fact of the matter is, from my perspective, I would rather have them as a customer than over time lose them because of this. So there are too much building space there for us to go to try to fill that building space up. So I would do everything in my power to think about how we're going to go about telling them something and hopefully get the same result that we
So
want.
just so I'm clear, are you saying that you would suggest that the board support the use of the township right of way, provided that the applicant or the property owners agree to do A, B, and C that we talked about, or that we would have expected property owners to do when the township requests the trail be on their private property?
Explain to them at the same time,
Yeah.
if they do it on their own, they're free to just
Yeah,
do what they
understood.
want to do. That way, we're somewhat protected. Now, if it comes out that they still want to do it in the right of way, well, at least we got a right of way agreement.
Right, so I guess the question is there a majority of the board that supports allowing them to use the township right of way to install the sidewalk to their specifications, provided that they sign an agreement that provides all the protections that we would want them to do? Is there support of that
If it
approach?
comes to that.
Oh, wait a minute now.
Not
We
yet,
don't know that.
not yet.
Well, then I'm not sure what we're asking.
What we're asking is to go back and have a further discussion with them about some of the matters we're discussing here, to see if that changes their perspective about their
Right, so-
interest in the right of way.
So it's really just to come back to you with more information after we've had that dialogue.
So-
Understood,
Absolutely.
understood, because I think how they respond is relevant to what decision you ultimately make.
I would also
Understood.
say that if we end up with going in the direction of in the right of way with this specific legal document, why should we be paying for that document? They should be paying
Yeah,
our legal
absolutely.
costs. But by the time we get done, we're gonna have $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 or more dollars involved. That should be on them if we go that direction. But I think.
I don't think it'll cost you $5,000 or $6,000, but I agree they should pay
Very
for
nice to share
it.
Put it at 95.
We have a very good form that we can provide to them and say, this is what we would expect in the reverse. But yeah, I think it's a great point.
Mark, do you have a sense of some of the things we've discussed to be able to share with them, with you?
The only part that I'm a little unclear of is so in the affirmative, we want to say, we like the idea of the plan. We are okay with the concept in the right of way with the following. List out, just like.
Well, we have reservations, some of the board members have reservations about it being in the right of way for a number of reasons that we've discussed, whether it's insurance, future liability unknown, utility dig ups, and future potential for abandonment and those kind of issues.
ADA concerns.
Yeah, and that, you know, it's caused a pause, that's why we're back talking with you, to see whether you're adamant, about that location in the right of way, or whether hearing some of these reservations, you would be, still, interested in constructing it, but obviously out of the right of way, or is it that a non-starter for you? If they say that's a non-starter, then we continue the discussion with how to really refine an agreement to satisfy all the board members. I think if it would end up in the right of way, something of that nature.
One of the things that could happen here, if you're not careful, is they could come back and say, well, if that's your position, and we don't like to do it ourselves, well, how about if you do the street just like you did over the other public park?
We already did that.
So
There,
you have to be, you have to be really careful how you want to go merchandise this thing. Because you know where you'd like to be, but you also want to make sure that you keep them and retain them and all that other good stuff that goes along with it. So
I don't want to offend them.
Marty, we already striped the road. They have a walkway just like Enterprise Drive.
Well, that's okay, well, they
just don't
could
do it.
say,
It's
I want to
unsafe.
keep it. Now, if that's okay with us, that's okay with us. If we would rather have it in the right of way under the conditions we set forth, well, then so be it. Or we try to put it in such a way that it ends up in their property. Now, I would ask you, in all the property they have to traverse, is it easy to construct? Is it easy to build the trail on their property as compared to going up on the right of way? Because if they have to go up and down over hill and dale, you know, this isn't exactly the easiest thing to do.
After walking it and looking at it closer, I think it'd be easier, more constructible in the right of way.
Because what a lot,
Because that road bed is
Right,
already.
a lot. I mean, we talk about, well, then, you know,
And a lot of their landscaping.
we have to,
lost.
we should go out there and, first of all, we should go back and figure out how we're gonna market this thing. But we should go out there and take a look at this thing, because if in fact, they really have, or would have a very difficult time doing what we're asking it, what we think we would like them to do, I'm not sure we wanna do that. I think we gotta make sure we see what we're asking them to do.
I appreciate your sentiment, Marty, and I'm with you there to further, review this.
Okay, I think we've talked this to death now.
I have my marching
You
orders.
have your marching orders, we know where we're going, and,
Take a conversation with J&J and
yes.
put the ball back in their court and see how they want to proceed.
The only other thing I will bring up, and I do know one of the principals, their concern on safety is truly a problem with the speed in that park. I think enforcement would be probably a little help to everybody.
I think it'd be very welcomed.
I think we need that. I would be, if we can, I would be very willing to do that tomorrow.
Well, we can speak to the chief and.
There are people, I can call the chief tomorrow, but there are
Okay.
people that absolutely scream through there, including UPS.
There should be.
UPS is like, big time.
All right,
Statistically, what will be, these employees.
Well, most of them are, I mean, they've got deliveries.
anyway, why don't we still have a fairly extensive agenda. I'm going to give this back to Kristen to discuss easements.
Okay, so we have been diligently working with really good property owners in the township for segments C and D of the Paoli Pike Trail. So I'm working with Steve Giampolo, Dan Langer, Mark Gordon, and myself to negotiate, and Rick has been involved as well, to negotiate with the private property owners for various easements needed to construct that portion of the Paoli Pike Trail, which goes from Reservoir Road to Route 352. We've had really good success as of today. We basically have the consent of all the property owners. As of when I sent you the board packet last week, I did not have the consent from Redeemed Properties LP, which is where the Swiss Farms is. Mr. Khan contacted me today and has accepted the township's offer to pay the consideration that the appraised value came in at. So rather than go through all the different properties parcel by parcel by parcel, I prepared a memorandum to you. In some instances, we're using PennDOT forms, which from the beginning of this project, I said I hate the PennDOT forms. I don't think they're the best forms to use. They don't extend protections that a property owner is going to want to see when they grant an easement to the township for public recreational trail. So knowing that, we offered from the very beginning that we would enter addendums to the PennDOT forms with the property owners that would provide the protections they'd like to see. Mainly insurance provisions, indemnification provisions, restoration obligations by the township, maintenance obligations, and then as we negotiated them with the various property owners, different people brought forth different concerns, such as TD Bank and wanting to make sure that we don't interrupt the access driveway that provides ingress and egress to their bank. Monument signage, they wanted to make sure that the construction activities were not going to disturb the monument sign. So some of the property owners were easier to deal with than others. Obviously, the Westchester School District was great to work with. They signed the easement with no questions. CVS, once we got the gentleman's attention, signed the documents, no questions. So it really was dependent on the property owner, but at the end of the day, right now, we have all of the documents. I have consent from all the property owners to execute the necessary documents. I do not have in my possession the signed documents from the shopping center, Goshen Equities, although I spoke with their counsel this afternoon, and she indicated she'll be sending the documents via overnight mail to me for tomorrow delivery. And I also, as I said, spoke with Jim Kahn, who is one of the partners of Redeem Properties LP, and they have accepted the consideration. So before you is a resolution or a motion to authorize that the chairwoman sign all of the appropriate easement documentations I have provided. That would include, in some instances, additional right-of-way, sidewalk easement, which will be for the trail, traffic signal easements, which again, some of this is cleanup that PennDOT's requiring the township to do because this is a PennDOT project. So for example, at the Sunoco property, there is an existing traffic signal there. And when that traffic signal was put in, there was not an easement granted. So PennDOT's making sure that where we have existing traffic signals that will be upgraded as part of the trail project to put pedestrian push buttons and pedestrian signs, the township has the necessary easements to make sure that traffic signal stays there. So traffic signal easement, we also have many instances where the township required temporary construction easements, which would only be for so long as the trail is being constructed. So again, it's a general motion, but there's a lot of documents that go hand in hand with the, can't remember, I think there's 21 properties.
Before we get into those details, I just want to publicly commend CTDI Parsons for the two wave compensation. I want to commend CVS. I want to commend Westchester Area School District and M&T Bank. They recognize the public benefit and the public good here, unlike perhaps some of the others who have cashed in.
I was just gonna make that exact point, Mike. Thank you for bringing that up. Goodman Properties, the owner of the CVS store, he remembered this planning commission and this board very well.
Sure.
And I think that's why it took a while for him to sign those documents. He particularly remembered Mr. Polishuk and his attentiveness to his project when he built that.
Very good, Mark.
We have had a long-standing relationship with Westchester School District. We have waived a lot of permit fees in the past, and they've sort of come back and forth.
Local government should be able to share freely.
together.
I agree.
And granted, it was only 12 feet. Only 12 feet.
And a motion to be made, there have to be some contingencies in about the execution of some of these agreements that you're missing. We want the chairman to sign, but we gotta put some contingency in the fact that.
Well, my memo indicated which ones I don't have the exact executed documents
But
yet.
we're trying to make the motion, doesn't have to reflect the fact that we don't have everything, or we can
say-
do everything.
Well, it's upon
The chairman
receipt,
can't sign only what we have.
right, but it's upon receipt, either she can sign everything that's in our possession, or I actually gave you the forms that are out for signature that will be received, so.
Does anything have, is anything mentioned about writer's cramp?
There's a lot of them.
My motion would be what Kristen just said, to sign what paperwork we have.
The paperwork that I have and will obtain before I meet with Janet, hopefully next Monday.
Yeah, so there are a few days before I'm scheduled to sign this, so hopefully everything will be in-house by
I
then.
think it will.
That's my motion.
If it's not, then you don't sign that one.
I
Figure it
refuse
out
to
later.
sign anything I don't have.
But I do, in the event redeemed properties takes longer than this week to get the documents back to me, I did not give you those form documents, so.
John,
But they are in fact the same forms that we've used for all the other,
Yeah,
nothing will change.
I have a motion, but I don't have anybody to make it.
You didn't make it yet.
I did.
So it's authorized
second
the
it.
chair to sign easement paperwork that we either have or will have by Monday.
That was my motion.
I second it.
Our attorneys.
And I would say that we may not have the redeemed properties, but the forms are the same, and they are out. I provided to Jim Con the same forms that we're using. So I would ask that the motion allow Janet, provided those forms come back as I've sent them to them, as presented, there's no changes to them, that she would also be authorized to sign those.
And as recommended by the township solicitor.
Oh, and is that we have, either have or will have, or that are recommended by the township by Monday, or that are recommended by the township solicitor.
That have been sent out to the property owner for execution.
I noticed that some of these, papers are notarized.
Right, not all, the temporary construction easements do not get recorded, and so only the documents that need to be recorded, we had them go through the notary process.
Right, is there a motion?
We already made one, I'm already seconded it.
Any comments from the board? Any comments from the audience? Yes, please come up.
Real quick. Thank you so much, Chris.
Oh, you're welcome.
Amazing job.
Oh,
Just
thank
your
you.
staff has been just legendary.
Thank you.
I want to know if there's any trees left in the north fork.
I'm Shelter at 1430 Grand Avenue. Are we permitted to know how much was dispersed for the easements for those people who wish to cash out?
Nothing's been dispersed yet,
But
yes, so, I mean, I have a list here, I can just provide this to you, as everybody's gonna take a look at it.
yeah, I'm just curious if there was a total amount you listed.
I don't have a total,
Oh, okay.
but maybe John does, but you
This is
can.
what on the website.
You take it with you.
I don't know, that's premature.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It's all in the documents. What's the total? What's the number?
No, you can
I
take it.
think
I
I
have,
have a copy, it's
So-
premature, yes or no?
Yeah, so
I'm giving her a status report. What I've done is I kept, as I've been negotiating, as we've been negotiating, I keep a status report. And as the appraisals came in, I listed the consideration. So I just gave her that summary sheet, which is what I provided to the board as well.
yeah, 381,000.
And just so the public understands, we didn't just make up these numbers. We had to follow the PennDOT procedure. So we had to pay to have an appraiser conduct an analysis of the real property interest that we're seeking. And then because it's a PennDOT funded project, that appraisal had to be reviewed by what's called a peer review specialist. And we had to use people that PennDOT says has the appropriate certifications to do those reviews. And I'll tell you, there was back and forth. There was quite a bit of back and forth between the appraisers. So, and then the property owners were provided, if they requested it, they were provided copies of those appraisals. 3 or 4 of them then asked for them. They asked to send them to their own appraisers, who then came back and said, we have no issue with the values that your appraisal came up with. So I thought that was good news.
Yeah, that's good news. And are there, I know that at one point at a meeting a couple of months ago, there was a discussion about how much money had been set aside for fees, like court fees and all that set aside.
John
In
has everything, when
case-
the Bailey Lake Show, John has everything broken out.
So we don't, but there are no,
Well,
court- there are no court fees, right?
Yeah, there's no.
So that money is no longer
Well, there's one.
needed.
There's
Well,
one.
there's, okay.
There's
Yeah.
one, so just so I can clarify.
Okay.
When the intersection of Route 352 of Pelly Pike was improved, right-of-way was obtained, but not all the right-of-way was obtained. So there's a, what we call a gap parcel that basically we don't know who the owner is. I think it's 504 square feet. Because we can't negotiate with an unknown owner, we have to file a declaration of taking. And that's one of your future items is a resolution to authorize, which, by the way, you did that 2 years ago. But when you file a declaration of taking, the resolution has to be dated within 1 year of that filing. That will be the only court case we have to file, and that will be very nominal, that cost.
Great, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Motion is second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried.
I want to thank our township solicitor. It's not inexpensive to get all this done, and the compensation is very expensive, but Kristen, you really worked hard.
Thank you.
And I know you were grinding on it, so we really appreciate your service and your work on this.
Thank you. Appreciate all your staff's help.
Next step, even though Kristen is expecting to have everything by Monday, we had on our agenda the condemnation.
Right, so this resolution, as I just mentioned, there is one gap parcel that because we don't know who the owner is, and that's just as a result of different deeds not including the same descriptions and not including areas within the right of way, we have to file a declaration of taking and then pay the consideration. It was appraised at $500. And believe it or not, we have to pay that money into court in order to have ownership and possession of that land. It seems a little crazy. Nobody's gonna come and claim that money. That money's gonna go SG to the state. So that's unfortunate, but that's the process we have to
Just the
follow.
way that the state picks up additional revenue.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen for a while, but that will happen. So this, and also, when, as of last week, I had not heard back from the principal of Redeemed Properties. He had given me indication to believe that he wasn't going to agree to the consideration we offered. And because time is ticking in terms of the grant funding, I included in the resolution, if necessary, the authority to condemn the property interest needed from Redeemed Properties. We don't have to act on that because I'm anticipating, based on the email I received today, that we'll have those easements signed.
We're just covering your bases.
Yes.
Yeah, did not know, because he hadn't told.
For anybody that listens, is listening to this and wonders what has been said, it means that we should have, by Monday or next week sometime, all the easements that we need in our possession to be executed by a chairman in order to get this thing moving forward.
All right, so do we still need to?
You still need to adopt the resolution.
Resolution,
That's correct.
okay. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All right. Any additional comments from the
Read it to-
board? From the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion is carried and we'll get that little,
Let's go.
Okay.
Here's where there's.
That's where you go.
hold on. Yes, that is exactly where we are.
Thank you, guys.
See, thank you,
Thank you,
Kristen.
Kristen.
very much.
Thank you for all
I'm sure you
the-
get enough sleep tonight.
Oh, yeah.
This next one's easy. I make a motion.
Well, let me announce what it is. Uh,
Let them guess.
We're considering a recommendation to add Sullivan House to the historic research inventory. And Sullivan House is in the Hershey's Mill Village properties. Mark, do you want to talk about it?
Okay, sir, I think.
Yeah, sure, we have our chairman of the historic commission. I can put
Would you
him on
like
the
to do it,
spot.
Ted?
Excuse me just one second,
Briefly.
Mark, did somebody?
The way you guys ask questions?
Did somebody go outside? I got a request to let somebody in.
I never heard the doorbell, so.
Okay. I'm gonna get out and
Unless
see if
the doorbell
someone's
doesn't
there,
work.
I have no idea.
You locked?
Sure.
So, yeah, so basically, the Sullivan House was not included on the original, historic resource inventory listing that was originally done in 99, 2000, and then adopted by the board in 2002. It's a significant property, beautifully maintained and upkept. It's the crown jewel of Hershey's Mill. They use it all the time for lots of things. Discussion started probably a year or so ago, and Chuck started the conversation, and then they were favorable to it, so the historic commission ran with it.
And Mark, why was it put on there in the first place, and why did it take so long once they started?
So we think, and as Rick recalls, they probably just couldn't get in the middle to look at it. We don't know.
If you recall, it was drafted, they hired Bob Wise, and they rode around and did a windshield survey. That's all they did.
Yeah, so they went around and marked up all the papers on every house and then made a recommendation
Did you say it took a year to get this from the time they?
Well, we started talking about it internally with the historic commission once they got reformed. And that's when Chuck said, hey, we should see if they're interested.
I was just curious,
Yeah.
if it's working right, because it seems like this should have been on there as a no-brainer.
Marty, it
Part of the
was,
conversation I got in, there was some reservations about what is this program? What will we have to subject the property to, ourselves to, be prohibited from, et cetera, et cetera. And when I met with them, it was really nice to share with them that I've been an owner of a historical resource for 24 years in the township. So it wasn't something where it was just one individual. It was the Hershey Mills Association, it was the Sullivan House Committee, there were multiple entities involved. And their boards were changing too, and their people and heads were moving around. So, but we did drive.
That's a movie.
You didn't say that.
They are the second ornament, so they're gonna be flight 2 of the historical Christmas ornament.
You're not selling those ornaments already, right?
That's how we got it.
We're shading down for 3 of them.
Absolutely.
I gotta get next year's and this year's.
No problem.
I need last year's.
Well, this is
They're
good,
premium right
this is
now.
a good thing. So-
Raising the price on July 1st, so you better get out now.
Last year should be discounted.
But I do really want.
I'd like to make a motion
No, sorry.
that we accept the recommendation to add the Sullivan House to the historic resources inventory for East Goshen Township.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mark, we still have them for last year?
Oh, yeah.
All right, any comments from the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is approved. All right,
Well, you would announce that the people are waiting over there on this day? There's an invitation.
Yeah, there's an open house, what is it, this week or next week?
is that just for Hershey's?
It's Hershey Mills people,
For the Hershey Mill group, is waiting.
so, but they open it up to the historical commission and the board, if you would like to come out, but it's
Not the
not.
residents.
It's not for the residents of East Goshen Township. That's really one of the only partial negatives of adding the house as a resource is it's off the beaten path, so to say, within the community, but it meets any and all standards well above and beyond.
Okay, we have a recommendation to accept a proposal for adjustments to the Hershey's Mill Dam Park project. Rick, would you explain what happened?
so we submitted our plans to DEP for Hershey's Mill Dam. They in turn submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps gentleman came out, biologist came out and concluded that because the area had been dewatered for so long, it effectively was a wetlands. If you recall, several years ago, our insurance company dropped the Hershey's Mill Dam. We had to go out to the specialty market. Specialty market agreed to insure us, but the caveat was we had to dewater the dam. So in the interim, I guess it was 8 years that it's been dewatered, the vegetation has taken hold, and the Corps has determined that, well, it's really a wetlands, even though it wasn't a pound before, it's now a wetlands. Long story short is we need to tweak the improvements, which will essentially involve, the first one will be, instead of constructing a parking lot, we'll construct some parking spaces that'll be along the side of the road. At least one handicap space, one regular space. We will probably end up having to haul the excess dirt out of the impoundment. And the other minor changes, instead of having macadam paths, there will be probably metal grading boardwalks that will let light through, so that when you walk on it, so in other words, the vegetation can live underneath the boardwalk. But long story short is we need to tweak the plan, and between Gannon Fleming and Simone is $37,700.
I have a question for you, Ricky. This takes us through the design and bidding and all that. What's the construction estimated to be? Because there's a cost on top of the 30 set. How much is it going to cost to build whatever we have to build?
Well, as part of this, we get an updated cost estimate.
You got any idea?
I know what it was before. We'll probably end up saving, we'll save some money on building a parking lot. I think the path Probably end up being a wash, because you know, it has to be a wash. Will probably cost us money to haul the excess materials.
I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to get an investigation going here, but this wetlands that they now assume is wetlands used to be a pond.
Yes,
So how in the hell do we come upon this point in time when you drain something, obviously it's going to be a wetlands?
because it goes back to DEP guidance that they issue, that they, and our interpretation that after everybody just went back and talked to his superiors, they concluded that it was now wetland.
Can we appeal that decision?
Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah, we're gonna try.
I'm trying to.
I think we probably won't see the project constructed in our lifetime.
I hear you, that was somewhat rhetorical.
Well, you know, unfortunately, we've had some discussions about whether, you know, overages and all that, and, you know, we prepare to do certain things. When I look at this, I'm looking at this, I think I'm looking at this the right way. They are now saying, what was the pond, which was a wetlands,
Yes.
is now a wetlands because we drained it and it has bushes growing in it or whatever else was growing in it. Now, what was going on by either Eric or somebody that all of a sudden decides that now we owe more money because what was a wetlands is now still a wetlands?
Yeah.
Why are we, I don't get too mad about some of this stuff because you can anticipate it or can't anticipate it. It makes sense then. But what the hell, when you have a pond, you got a pond, when you drain the pond, you mean to tell me they're gonna come back and tell me that the whole pond down at the reservoir is gonna be a wetlands?
No, our argument down there is it's only been 2 years. Our problem is Hershey's Mill, it's been 8 years.
Well, so.
Marty, so Marty, Army Corps of
Is
Engineers.
there anything we can do about this with the Corps of Engineers or DEP or?
DEP was perfectly comfortable with taking the position that everything below the water line was treated as an impoundment. The Army Corps of Engineers, who has jurisdiction over the wetlands. So we have, they made a jurisdictional determination that is wetlands there to final arbitrator. I assume we could appeal it, whether or not the project, where we would go, how much it would cost.
Ricky, here's my question. 8 years ago, we knew eventually this was gonna happen at some point.
Yes.
Somehow, some point. When the estimates were given from Eric, again, Fleming and so forth, they, in my opinion, other than being 8 years out of any wage increases, they should have included in their cost 8 years ago what the Army Corps of Engineers is saying now, because even if it was 6 years ago, it would be the same thing. Once you take the water out, it becomes a wetland.
We drained the impoundment 8 years ago. Gannon Fleming was hired at 16. In between, and keep in mind, before that, we were going around with, we were going to fix the dam, breach the dam. We've been fooling around with this dam for almost, about 15 years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And again, Gannon Fleming, after consultation and talking to DEP, we were underneath, well, under DEP's guidance, that they were going to treat it as a below water line, as an impoundment. The Army Corps of Engineers is the final arbitrator over wetlands.
Well, so why didn't somebody go to the Army Corps of Engineers way back and say, you're gonna have this?
Well, it
Why is it now? It should have been then, not now.
Because
I mean, somebody's gotta appeal the goddamn thing, because it just seems to me, we're doing something because we were asked to do something, and now another governmental agency is piling on, making it more expensive, and we don't know what it's gonna cost, because I would be willing to bet you it's gonna be 37,000 plus before 37,000 and stays 37,000, and I'm getting sick and tired of doing it.
Marty,
So,
I share your frustration.
I don't care what the hell happens, somebody's gotta appeal this or whatever you do to the Army Corps of Engineers, say, what the hell are you doing?
Let me ask this, Marty, short of a formal appeal, Rick, could we request a consultative sit down with the Army Corps to say, do you realize what you're doing to us here and the ridiculousness of what it sounds like a wetland that was existed before is a wetland now, and now we still have to pay? I mean, I'd like to just have a sit down with them, with a couple of the supervisors, to hear the logic. If nothing else, we'll be able to, throw a tomato at them when they leave. But short of a formal appeal, I just would like to at least have an explanatory discussion with them.
We may find out that there really is an Army Corps of Engineers, and that it's not a fictitious
Remember,
organization.
this is the same group that I don't know how many years ago it was, that made us post a sign up on Green Hill Road that said, potential for flooding.
It was not the Army Corps of Engineers.
No, that was,
That was township.
But it was wasn't the Army Corps that said if that dam fails, there's a potential for fatality across the road?
Army Corps of Engineers regulates wetlands.
Can I blame them for anything besides this? Then
Bog turtles, the fact that,
Levies.
I like
yeah, bog turtles, levies, the fact that one of our projects, we have to put up a fence to keep the bog turtles out. I mean, they are charged with protecting, we could try to set a meeting, but, I think you kidding yourself.
Wait a minute, Rick, on all these things, we had people tell us how many acres of wetlands we had that had to be accounted for,
Right.
whatever the hell we were doing. So you mean to tell me that we had, that at that time, nobody asked the Corps of Engineers if what was identified was the right number of acres of land that should be, considered wetlands?
They respond to requests, they respond to permits and come out, and that's what they did.
In other words, no one talked to the Corps of Engineers, Army Corps of Engineers before now.
Not for this application.
who was chairman? Was that she?
No, it might have been
I think
Cindy.
it's his fault.
It's probably Cindy. But anyway,
Well, we're all frustrated with this.
I don't care what you do.
Forget about
As
it.
far as I'm concerned, the board agrees, we should find out, we should protest and form some kind of appeal here, because we're getting screwed.
I agree.
We should at least have somebody formulate a letter to go to them stating our case, to see if there can be a
We submitted,
reconsideration.
in other words, when they came out and came back with their preliminary determination, we submitted all the information we had to show what we had done to this point.
Well,
They
Change
used
the
that.
date and send it out again.
no, the letter should be, the Board of Supervisors reviewed this, and we are frustrated with this kind of a ruling that's cost our local government, our taxpayers, another $40,000. We would like to have a sit-down explanation to the elected officials as to why this logic exists
I agree with that.
to persecute us and cause our taxpayers ridiculous amounts of money that just seem
Well,
illogical.
I would have to say, Rick, based on, I think we should do that. I think Mike's right on target. But if we want to do that, and we know we've got the big dam down there, I don't care if it's 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, you better get the Corps of Engineers out to see if in fact we declared the
We
right
do the
amount of
same
wetland.
thing, that's right.
We will do that.
Because there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is insanity. How can they wait till a permit's issued to come out and tell you that you're missing something?
Because until you have an it's like, until you submit an application for your deck, we don't know, review it to determine whether or not it meets the site or not. So they have to have a permit application.
That triggers anything.
But
I would-
keep in mind, we have
I would-
grants out there that are out there.
Is the board agree that we should send a letter that Mike described to the engineers?
What's the timing like? Do we,
We sent another DP, the guy who he came out is very responsive, and maybe he'll agree to a meeting. I mean, this way, it's not up to him to agree to a meeting, it would have to be to his boss.
Right.
but do we have, I know we have timetables on making these, changes to the pond area.
We can
With this-
afford
with
6
this-
weeks anyway. We can afford 6 weeks.
Well, that's my question. Are we on in a rush to get things done in order for funding issues, or?
Or the plan was essentially that under this scenario, we could be constructed next year.
If we
want, I'll reach out to the biologist and see if we can set up a meeting. We can table it.
And those don't cost anything. That's very wise being said that.
But
Okay.
at the same time you do that, please do the other dam before we get trapped in the same thing.
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Okay. So that, we will table that.
Well, we're not tabling it.
We got to.
You want to?
Well, we're tabling the motion.
Yeah.
We're tabling the motion.
Yep.
Okay. We have a recommendation to adopt resolution 2019-34B, which increases the fee for the PA State Police background check to $22.
To 32, no, it's increases the fee for the solicitation permit to
I would move for a
$32.
friendly
Okay.
amendment to that, to increase it from 32 to 35.
No.
Wait.
There's two parties.
Back up. The solicitation fee has two components to it. There's the background check and there's the processing fee.
Correct.
What we're proposing to do is to increase the solicitation fee to $32, which includes 22 for the background check and keep it at 10 for the processing fee. Mike is now saying we should raise another $3. I would kindly remind the board that fees are, need to be related to the service being provided. The service that's being provided, the cost of that, for various reasons I won't get into, the administrative fee, those costs the township incurs has not increased in the 7 years that we've had this solicitation.
Oh, okay, so the fees, so my suggestion to increase the, somewhat, loosely from 32 to 30 arbitrary. But when's the last time we've done an administrative review of the cost relative to our salaries, et cetera?
Well, Mike,
to verify.
Mike, I would kindly encourage you to table that thought, and because it is on the agenda for tomorrow morning. There are a number of fees that we are going to be looking at, to raise, number of permit fees, cert fees, sewer inspection fees. So yes, it's
So Mike,
definitely
have you now decided that you can live with $32?
Well, no, we're tabling it.
No, we're
Hey,
tabling.
well, let's do.
No,
We're tabling discussion of the broader fee increases. This one has to
we
get,
need a
because we're
motion.
losing
I
money.
made the motion. Mike's got the second, he's the one that's got the problem.
the motion?
Nobody
I
did.
actually offered a friendly amendment. So it's not so friendly.
Marty made a motion
Nobody heard it.
to increase the fee to $22.
No,
32.
32, I'm sorry, 32. And Michael made a
I offered
amendment.
an amendment which
You
was
wanted
not
to go-
accepted.
you wanted to deduct-
You're removing the amendment.
I'll
second-
I'll second the original one.
There you
all
go.
right, any other comments from the board? How about from the audience? We're getting a little crazy up here.
He's waiting here, gentlemen, I gotta get the track together. What are we doing?
We have someone who wants to make a comment.
Quick question. Michelle Truitt, 1430 Grandin Lane.
Yeah.
Still. When you refer to this background check fee, who is it being imposed upon? You all?
Solicitors. So when they come in for
Okay.
a permit, we make sure that they have a state background check to make sure there's no warrants for their arrest, those kinds of things.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Equal vote?
I don't think they voted that.
We have one abstention.
Because you want them.
Okay,
What happened? Meetings go too long.
all right, it passed 4-0 and 1. Okay,
Hey, Rick, is this the thing you're advising us not to do?
Yeah,
What's the next?
Jason, we got some updated information about the trail cost information for the segment B. So Jason suggested that we table this when we open this.
In light of all the easements we just talked about with Kristen, we went back and used that information to better our estimate for easements for moving forward for A and B. So it's the best information we have, the current cost per square, or per linear foot, basically.
So
We have a lot of- we have a lot of good ideas for moving forward.
okay. Now, next, we're gonna consider a request to extend the wood chip path on Line Road from the soccer field to East Boot Road.
What happened to, we booked it as something else? Air mitigation.
What?
Don't we do
Okay,
something about air mitigation in here?
Right now, we're doing the which.
The wood chips.
Well, I got
We have what we have is, I guess it was last year, earlier this year, Mrs. Weaver sent an email saying, or letter that Mark saying he wanted the trail extended. And then she was gonna get something from Shirley Fox, but we never got it. So anyway, so the long story short is Mrs. Fox or Mrs. Weaver's would like the board to continue the trail up to, East Boober.
Look, how many in the past year, or even 2 years, besides these two, how many have asked for that Bailey Pike Trail to be expanded all the way up? It's going to cost a little bit of money that we don't anticipate, I haven't anticipated. Yes, I know it was on the original plan, maybe it should have been done at that point in time, but I gotta tell you, because of the overgrown brush that was there and manageable at one point is now a challenge when you get up near that country club. And I don't mind putting the trail up there, but I need to know how many people have asked for it, how many people would use it, where's expected to go to and from, and what's the probability it's going to be used for to and from? Because I don't want a trail sitting there nobody ever uses. I'm all for trails, but I'm not for trails that aren't used.
This is the correspondence we've gotten for this trail.
Well, I see two people's names.
That's what we have.
Two people's names not going to be doing it for me. I want to know, I think we have a right to find out what the utilization is going to be of this road, and two people are not going to do it.
And where it would go from there is another driving
I know it's going to
question.
be as far as Line Road, but where's it going to finish? It's going to finish at East Blue Road, then what are you going to do?
If we bring it up to East Boot Road, then what's the next phase that would be wanted?
I believe I'll go back, but I believe that there's a trail that goes across the Dixon property that then connects to the township property, would then get you, that's the sense that they theoretically get down, not Applewood, Ashbury Preserve.
Yeah, so what's the odds of people doing that? And who's going to do it?
Just to interject, when we did all the trail planning, there was no discussion about this. The public didn't come out and force about it. We looked at the neighborhood connections we wanted to do. This was never anticipated. We've got other priority areas that have been identified in a planning process. This may be a great idea, but if we didn't consider it, no one brought it up. No, we had all those public forums. Nobody said, put a sticky on Line Road saying we want to connect here. Those
Well,
weren't identified.
Once the trail is in place, which is, several years down the road, we will be doing some investigations for connecting trails.
Yes.
Well, we're always going to be looking
Yeah.
for areas
And
to.
so,
Study that.
at the time, I would suggest that at the time we do that, we add this to the list and investigate it along with everything else.
Mark's right, our big request was getting to the soccer fields, getting to the beginning of soccer
We
fields.
did that before.
We did that, and everybody was happy except for one or two people. That would be the same thing after the Paoli Pike Trail is done and we start looking at feeder trails, then that would go on the list with 60 others.
We're probably going to have some blowback going above where we are already.
Well, there definitely will be blowback.
So, Mark, would you add that to the list? I know we have a
master list.
we have a master list of, because we did study that at one point.
Maybe we might have.
Yeah, plus, we don't have any cost estimate to even put a wood chip trail along there, what it's
No.
gonna cost to clear and easements and so on. And the other thing is, if people wanna walk on there, they should walk up to the existing trail and not walk out on that roadway. If it's dangerous, walk on the existing trail.
Out of all the roads in the township, that's probably one of the most dangerous to walk.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Consider a recommendation for stormwater modification for 938A Cornwallis Drive.
So real quick, Madam Chairman, we have a single-family home proposed It's going through Act 167 review, our stormwater management ordinance. 938A Cornwallis Drive is a flag lot. It was created in 2007, I believe. In that subdivision, that current property has a home and a garage. The home and garage both straddle the property line, so one of the agreements that the owners agreed to at the time, one of the conditions was, you can continue to use it as is, even though it's non-conforming. The second you apply for a building permit, the first thing that has to happen is both structures have to come down because they're non-conforming. And you're gonna build on one lot, you're gonna build in a conforming way. So obviously the stormwater ordinance has changed. There's a provision in the code that requires a 50-foot non-disturbance buffer from wetlands. We're talking about wetlands again.
Is this during the construction? Is that
This is during construction.
just during construction?
Yes.
Okay.
So the applicant cannot place the house without encroaching on that 50-foot setback with disturbance. The house will not be within 50 foot of it. No driveway or anything will be within 50 foot. Just the construction, some grading areas. So they have to disturb within 50 feet of the wetland. The new house. The property owner, we went back and forth with them on this review, and we said, we don't think the board will waive it. So we offered a modification, and they accepted it. The modification is 25-foot non-disturbance buffer with the inclusion of a temporary construction fence that will be in place throughout the entire project. It'll be 4-foot high chain link fence to delineate the area so we know we aren't going to get vehicles or any kind of disturbance past that area. They also impose a condition that, should any disturbance be made in the wetland area, they'll repair it in a timely manner or something like that. We think that not granting some type of modification to this section of the ordinance could basically make the property undevelopable as he's proposed. Obviously, he'd probably do a much smaller house, a much smaller footprint of disturbance, but what they're proposing meets the spirit of the ordinance for protecting the wetland during the construction period. The erosion and controls that's proposed in that plan is significant. It's much more than you would typically see. It's like to the nth degree.
This sounds to me as though it says, and I understand we're trying to help people out. It says to me, it's 50 feet or 25 feet if you put up the chain link fence 4 foot high to make sure that it's not disturbed. I mean, why would it be okay here, but it's not okay everywhere?
Well, certain properties are going to have different constraints, and
Well, I'm not saying they have to do it 4 feet, but if they come back and ask for 4 feet, or why doesn't the ordinance stormwater management thing change to be 4 feet with a fence? If in fact that's okay, but here it should be okay for any place.
The great news is
we can.
that next year, the whole Act 167 is going to be redone again, and we'll be going through all this again.
So this wetland buffer will be one of
Wetlands,
the-
buffers,
it'll be
and
one of
all
the
the stuff
longer lists.
that you could do today out there, we probably will not be allowed to do tomorrow.
Yeah,
So,
that's right, it's gonna be worse off. than-
but what after talking today, we believe that in this section, we're going to protect the wetland with a temporary chain link fence, which will ensure that somebody doesn't get too.
I think we should do it, just engage the fact.
We will add,
Engage the fact that you should add it to the
we
ordinance.
will add that to the list of modifications when we go through the thing.
And that's what we'll recommend to the DEP, and if the DEP
I was gonna
blesses
say,
it.
should we have the Army Corps review this?
Well, DEP has to approve it.
Hey, Mike, only if they come down and talk to us.
Mark,
Hey,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
we've been there with the Army Corps, and I was going to say earlier,
DEP
very
has-
similar situation where the township engineer said, this is a wetland, you have to do X, Y, and Z. The applicant said, no, it's not, no, it's not. They brought the Army Corps in to defend their position, and he cited on their side, the township lost them out.
Well, then that gives us hope when they come in and talk.
That's what
about
I think it does. I think there's, Gannett Fleming or Benoni, they have resources, they know people down there, the Corps.
DEP has to approve this, correct?
No.
If we're granting temporary for
It's a
the.
modification. You're creating a modification.
Okay, so DEP
You have the right.
doesn't look at this.
Under section 11,
Rick, you're okay with this?
modifications. We are.
I was gonna say,
Motion, we grant the waiver.
I second it.
yes.
Modification.
And any,
Marty or?
A modification.
Modification.
any comments from,
So at the end of the day, when the construction is done, the fence is removed, the house is still within the 25 feet, not 50 feet, is that correct?
No,
No.
the fence will not be within the 50-foot buffer. I don't have the plan
Or
for
it's a temporary fence, right?
Yes.
So,
this is a temporary.
It'll be 25 feet.
yeah, but
But once it's all done, the fence will come down.
but the house will be situated
Yes.
properly.
Yes. it'll
Okay,
be-
thank you, that's all I wanted.
Okay. Any comments from the audience? All in favor? Aye. Motion is approved. No,
Well, you know what, I need to, hold on, Madam Chairman, this is very late for doing this. Is this the Dan Ferry that I know? Plumbing contractor?
Yes.
I want the board to know that I have, no prior knowledge, or nor did he come to me asking for any kind of consideration. This is a friendly competitor that I know very well. And for what we just approved?
he's
The department does the
saying that there's no conflict.
There is nothing implied that I'm doing anything to help him out.
That was after.
Well, I'm sorry, but I
Well, you
just
could have
remembered.
recused yourself.
I
Then it would have been
I
14.
just remembered it.
Okay. All right, do we have any public comment on non-agenda items? No?
Don't call.
Okay. Well, there isn't any other matters.
We're
There are
done.
no other matters.
We are done.
If you look at the-
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I have a 20-minute presentation for this. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for indulging Mr. Shane tonight. He doesn't get out very often.
Actually, I'm amazed he runs at 9 o'clock.